Hello and welcome to The Road with Ali Sultan. I am Ali Sultan, stand up comedian, writer, cat daddy, ADHD man. And the reason I told you I have ADHD is because I want you to not listen to this in a linear way. The theme of this podcast, and this will be the introduction, and the road embodies a big part of my life, which is me as a stand-up comedian, traveling the country, going to, from not just the country, sometimes the world, going from places as grand as Dubai and as small as Minot, Wisconsin, a town of 500 people. And the interesting part is no matter how big or small the destination is, the road is just full of interesting characters, because what make things interesting is not the place itself. It's the people, right? People are full of stories, and I always have a lot of fun interactions, and I'm a little open. I'm an open person. I give not too open. I give everybody a good hot 5 minutes. I give everybody a good 5 minutes of my full attention and full self, and I vibe them out. And sometimes people are not bad people, they're just not my vibe. So, and if I sense that that we're not compatible, I shut down. But because of that 5 minutes that I give anybody, I'm talking about randoms. I talk to everybody when I can. I'm not super talkative, but I'll be open to people. And because of that, and because of the road and my job as a stand-up comedian, I meet a lot of interesting people, and I have interesting interactions, and I oftentimes learn something about the world, myself, others on the road. So this is going to be a podcast that will be taking place sometimes on the road. Sometimes I record bits and pieces of it while I'm traveling, maybe interview some people, maybe make some phone calls, maybe talk to the opening act that I bring with me, whom possibly experience something with me together, and so forth. But the other part of the road is my journey, the road I've taken until this point in my life. I'm 36, but I tell people I'm third world 36. I feel like I've experienced. Yeah, okay, let's put it this way: if you were an average American who had an average American life, your life experience, in contrast to mine, if we do the math on that, I'm about 86 in American years. I've just lived such a crazy life. And so part of the road will be the road itself, and then my personal journey. And I tried to think about how I start. What part of my journey do I share? And I think I'm going to start with stand-up comedy. I'm a stand-up comic. It's a big part of my identity, and a lot of people know me from stand-up, so it's only fair that I start with stand-up and how that all came about, and the journey that got me to this place. And I don't know if I can summarize all of that in one episode, so we'll see how it goes. I'll talk it out and see how it feels. If this one episode can give it justice. If not, and maybe another episode, part 2, part 3, or maybe it's a series. Who knows? Because the journey never ends. But anyways, I started stand-up comedy, when I was about 22 years old. And I started at a place called Acme Comedy Company. And before I get to that moment of deciding to try comedy, I got to give you a little bit of a background. So people always ask me, how did you get into this? How did you figure out you were a stand-up comic, etc., right? And the answer is never so simple that I can answer within seconds. And sometimes, honestly, I don't fully understand all of the reasons that put me in this path. I know some of them, but sometimes I'm surprised to learn something myself. But overall, I always had this feeling as a child. No matter how lonely life got, no matter how cruel the world was to me, no matter how many signs and people that are trying to push me down or eat my self-esteem and tell me I wasn't nothing. I've always felt this inner calling. I've always had this calling that I was meant for something different, something hopefully great, important, something impactful. I've always had carried that as a child since I could, as far as I remember, maybe like 6 years old, just having that feeling. So I've always had that, and it's been kind of a source of esteem for me too. And no matter how bad things got, I was like, I know I'm meant for something, and I just got to stick it out. And when I get there, when I get to that place in space, it will be fun. It will be grand. So it made me hopeful as well. So that inner voice, that calling, and I'm a spiritual person, and I think there's a spiritual aspect to our calling. That thing never went away. That voice was, sometimes it dips, and when you lose connectiveness with yourself, sometimes sometimes you disconnect from who you are, and you don't listen to your intuition, and in those spaces, that inner voice or calling dims. But in a lot of times when I am quiet, when I isolate myself in a healthy manner, I hear this call to do something. So the reason I'm telling you this is because of that thing, I kept trying different things, thinking that's the calling. So I'm trying to think. The earliest thing that I thought it was basketball. So anytime I had some sort of passion for something, anytime I had an obsessiveness for something, I thought this calling, this thing that I feel that is for this particular thing. So my first big obsession was basketball. At the time, I was living in Ethiopia. I was born in Yemen. For those who don't know me, I'm born in Yemen. And around the age of 9 or 10, I didn't know how old I was at the time. I was moved to Ethiopia, and my mother left me with my aunt Samira, who was passed, and me and my cousin Rayyan, who is Samira's son, came together from Yemen. Samira, who was my aunt, a little backstory for you, was an incredible networker. She was just really good with people. She's someone who you can put her in any condition and take away everything from her, and she'll rise to the top just by how good and charismatic she was with people and making connections. She was really successful in Yemen, in Sana'a. She started a business. Back then, travel agencies were a big thing, and she had a travel agency, and she was doing well for herself. She was so popular. Let me give you an example of how popular she is. In the 90s, maybe I was 3 years old. I remember this, actually. I remember this day. I have a really solid memory of me as a child. It's not everything, but I remember a lot of things well. I remember this day. I was outside with my friend Muhammad, and Muhammad and I were playing. This is how young I was. I remember this whole thing, but apparently I didn't speak yet. Okay, so my family had no idea where I had been and what happened, but I remember I was at the age where I'm starting to learn what people are saying, and I had maybe bits and pieces of words, but I understood what was going on, but I didn't speak well yet. So what happened is me and Muhammad were outside, and we wanted candy, and he said, he was older than me, so he spoke well. So he said, let's just go to my dad's, and he's going to give us money for candy. And I said, okay. And I just followed him. And then, so we left our little neighborhood, and we walked on the side of the highway, and we kept walking and walking and walking and walking. And then at one point we both got lost, and the sun is starting to come, to set, and it's getting a little darker. And now he's like lost. He doesn't know where he's going, but he's like, you know what? Let's just go back home. And then we had a disagreement. He told me that the way back home is this way, and I knew. I thought, the street lamps. I associated our apartment, our home, or location of the neighborhood based on the street lamps. So I thought, oh, if we follow the street lamps, that's where my home would be. But he was right. So he went one way when he went home successfully, and I continued walking on the path of these street lamps, and I get lost. And it got dark. Now it's probably around 7, 8 p.m. And I'm scared, and something tells me, again, the spiritual thing. I truly believe something just has me back. Something just told me to go into this gas station. I go into this gas station. I was drawn to this gas station, and I walk in, and I'm just standing, and it's funny how you could be as young as 3 years old, but understand like danger. I remember feeling like, hey, this could go bad if these are not good people. And I just kind of felt them out, just like, just kind of shied away, but I didn't want to go, hey, help, or approach the gentleman at the gas station. But eventually they just noticed me and they start talking to me. And then they realized that I was lost. And then they took me to the police station. I have fragments of memories of being at the gas station and the guy. And then my next memory is at this like office at a police station. And I said names of family members when I say Samira Shemsan, like my Samira, anyways, my aunt's name. That's who they recognized. Somehow they knew my aunt. So they figure out who my family. This is pre-cell phone, pre-internet, pre-public records, because this is Yemen. They don't really have records like that. I don't know how. Anyways, they somehow knew my aunt, and from then on, my family came and picked me up. And I remember just being asleep and being wrapped in this red blanket when I got home to the apartment. But anyways, that's a look. This ADHD branch of a little bit of Samira. So Samira had her travel agency, did really well, and she got married to an abusive British man. So my cousin, actually, Rayan, is half white, and actually when he was a child, he looked really Caucasian, and he abused her, caused a big ripple in our lives. My grandmother was super unhappy with this relationship, and it caused her a lot of distress and da-da-da. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that story now, but fast forward, we're in Ethiopia. And the reason I got to tell you this part of the story, and I'll go in depth a little more, is to explain to you what drew me into basketball and how important it was at that point. So I am in Ethiopia with my aunt, who at this point has fled Yemen because her husband, or ex-husband at this point, has stole a lot of her stuff, abused her financially, put her in a lot of debt, so she actually had to flee Yemen because she owed money, etc. So now when I moved to Ethiopia, bringing her son along with me, Rayan, we are living in in Yemen, you think you're middle class, and then you come and experience American middle class. You go, oh, I was definitely poor. Then Ethiopia, the middle class there is even lower. It's like, I don't know. I don't even think it qualifies as a middle class. We were in bad condition. Again, she came and started from nothing. We lived in a semi-hut, no shower, just a really terrible place, and no kitchen, no fridge, no oven, no what else? No dryer, washer. Everything has to be done by hand, and we're all sleeping on the floor. She had a bed, and we at this point, is me, my other cousin, who she kind of adopted, and Rayan, and this is a funny thing about being in Ethiopia, is like you could be that poor and have a maid. So it was just us four plus the maid, five, who became literally just like part of the family. And she had rank. You know, she had higher rank than me. I'll tell you that. She used to beat me up. So, and I don't want to say that as it was like a recurring thing, but I'm just saying that she could hit me and get away with it. Your boy was no bitch. I fought back. So I'm living in this type of life in Ethiopia, and you know I'm feel very isolated. I'm away from the language I speak. I'm away from the people that I've grew up with and friends I had, and my sister, older sister. We have different dads. She's living in Saudi Arabia with her father. My mother is in America with my stepdad, and my dad is in Yemen, and he was going through stuff, so he couldn't be there. So in this space of pure isolation, I found basketball. It started with my escape was TV. We had a little TV later on. My aunt started with nothing, and then by the end of my stay there, we had like a little villa, you know, a decent house, 2 levels, a whole yard. That's how great of a networker and how charismatic and she was. And part of her success is she gave back. So she whatever abundance she had, she shared. I really truly believe that if you give, you get tenfold. And so she never like hoarded money or wealth or anything like that. She had money. She just gave it away. Our house was open for anybody. So people from the village would often come and stay with us. And she would help people go to Saudi Arabia and get a job there, etc. And I think part of that philanthropy spirit of hers gained her a lot of success, and I've adopted some of that too. I like to give back as much as I could, and I know the power and importance of that. So, you know, at this point, I'm watching TV, and it was like my escape, and I would watch TV quite often. And there was an animation show. It was in Arabic. It was called Slam Dunk, and it's just this redheaded, tall kid who had no skills but potential. You know, he had tenacity, determination, but no skill. And I just kind of felt I vibed with this guy, you know, to be the underdog, but you have potential. And, you know, you see him like get better every episode, etc. It made me fall in love with basketball, and I became obsessed. And I remember just like making the basket thingy, the ring part, out of like random metal and putting it on one part of our house, and then using just like a sheep ball and practicing with that. Wasn't even a basketball. Out of nowhere, one day, my aunt from my dad's side, who I didn't know quite well because I grew up on my mother's side of the family, and her husband showed up to my school. I used to go to Yemen Community School. It's where all the Yemenis who were born in Ethiopia, or Yemeni Ethiopians that were born there, went to school too. It taught Arabic, and it also had Ethiopian classes as well. So there are 2 people that went to that school. People that are locals who are just going through the Ethiopian classes and learn things in Amharic, and then there was us who were learning Arabic and so forth. And the school it's not like here, it's like middle school, high school. It was all everything at once, which is a disaster, really. So from first grade all the way to 12th grade, we all went to the same school. And that could be good and bad, right? So one day they showed up, and she's like, brought a camera. She was taping me so she can send it to my father. I would love to see what happened in that video. And she said hello, and we walked around, and then she told me my father went to that same school. I had no idea that my dad even lived in Ethiopia. All of my life, I was told that my dad was Yemeni, fully Yemeni, but later on, actually a few years ago, I learned that he was biracial. He's half Yemeni, half Ethiopian. And he was born in Ethiopia and went to that same school. So she gives me 100 birr. 100 birr at the time was a lot of money. And I took that 100 birr and after school, I went and I bought a basketball, and it was my most precious possession. At this point, by the way I would play basketball is I was always trying to convince anytime we had the sports hour, so there was an hour where we were outside and we get to play whatever sports. I've always tried to push for basketball, but everybody wants to play soccer mostly, and basketball was no one in Ethiopia, so it was hard to play basketball because it was not often that we got to get the ball, and we only had one ball at the school, and that ball was shared by everybody. So now I had my own ball, so I can bring my ball to school and play, and there was enough people that were interested. There was this other kid who was short but really dribbled well and stuff like that, and some of my Somali friends were down to play as well. So I just played basketball all the fucking time. I would imagine myself to be this anime character and just love the idea of just getting better. And I knew that I was going to come to America one day. And I was like, maybe when I come to America, not maybe, I was sure of it. I'm going to be an NBA player. I was like, that calling matches this thing, and this is where I'm going to put my energy. I just dreamt and dreamt of being an NBA player, and I would practice. I've never was taught basketball, but I'll dribble for hours. Whatever Kobe was doing, bro, I was doing that shit too at that age. I was nonstop practicing. And I was okay, but I for some reason, when I would play in a game, I would just feel self-conscious and just fumble. I couldn't handle the pressure of being watched. But when I would play with just regular pickup games or whatever, I was okay. And I was really good, actually, honestly, in Ethiopia. But what I forgot is being good in Ethiopia does not mean you're going to be good in America. Because in America, everybody plays basketball. It's because it's available. Everybody can play it. In Ethiopia, nobody. Sometimes the people I played with, it was their first time touching a basketball. So I got delusioned. I was like, man, I might be the GOAT. I might be the next MJ. But really, what it was extreme poverty and lack of resources made me look really good. I was the only guy who put in 20 hours of practice. So came with America with this big dream of being an NBA player. And I remember in first year of high school, I went to Fridley High School, and high school there starts at 9th grade. And I remember the gym teacher was really cool. One day he took us canoeing, and on the canoe was just me and him, and we just had this intimate moment where he asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, basketball player, NBA player. And he goes, yeah, you and every other guy. He didn't even believe in it, you know? And I go, no, but I will. I just felt so determined. And then later that week, I played with the regular American kids and after school, and one of the kids dunked on me. Yeah, man, I knew I wasn't built the same as even in Ethiopia. Everybody was barely getting their vitamins and minerals, and so they're a little scrawny, not that tall. The kids in America were on some steroids. Whatever milk you guys are drinking over here was powerful stuff. So when I saw regular African Americans play basketball, I was like, oh, this is not. I'm not even close to this. I tried out for varsity. I couldn't get in there. I played for the B team. And then, like I said, anytime we would actually have games, I would just fumble under pressure. I remember one time I made a steal, and then I got to the basket real fast, and everybody went, whoa! And I made a layup and I missed. And they're like, oh. And then I grabbed it, I rebound again, and I went for it again. They go, whoa! And then I missed, and they're like, wow. And then I did it a third time, and when I missed the third time, a guy goes, come on, man. And that's how I knew this ain't for me, bro. So I was like, okay, basketball is not it. But what is this feeling? Where does this feeling belong? So come high school, I kind of I go the opposite, a different world. I went from basketball to now academics. I wanted to be a theoretical physicist. I was like, okay, I have a good imagination. I'm creative. And maybe this is where this thing is, this feeling, this calling maybe belongs in this. So, I would try to figure out theories and the blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, I truly believe I could have been okay in that world. But unfortunately, I didn't have good schooling. Abundance and resources helps a lot, right? If you I could have been great at piano, but the piano was not available to me as a kid. I could have been good at math, but I didn't have that foundation. The foundation is important because my schooling went this way. I went to first grade in Yemen, private school, did well. I got bored because I learned so much quicker than a lot of kids. So like by the time they were doing additions, I was learning multiplications, etc. And this is actually ties back to this identity in high school, as my math teacher kept telling my parents that I'm a genius, and I really held down to that. It's funny, how one teachers have so much power on us as children. And if you're a teacher and you hear this, know the power that you have, man. I have just a few teachers that believed in me, and they saw me and took the time to see me and call me things like brilliant or hardworking, whatever those things. I really needed those because I wasn't necessarily getting that in the environment that I grew up in, and it meant so much to me. And remember that you have that power, and you have so much power. And you could be the opposite. You could be the person that just crushes a dream as a teacher. So use your power responsibly. Went to first grade, got bored, did well, liked it. I remember learning to read, and like I'd be in the car, and like anytime there's a sign, I'm like, oh my God, I can read that sign. I loved it. And second grade, I skipped a lot. The bus would come, and wouldn't get in on it and get on the bus. And I grew up in a neighborhood that everybody knew each other, so you had to hide when you skipped school. Otherwise, people will snitch on you. And eventually, they did snitch, and it was a big problem. Your boy skipped a lot of second grade. I don't even remember second grade. That's how much I skipped. Third grade, we were in London. My mother and I may or may not have illegally immigrated to London. Another story for your boy later on. We'll get into London. We'll get into Ethiopia. Those are big parts of my journey, but we'll stay on task here. So we went in there, and third grade was we were there for 6 months. I did third grade in London. I was like just learning English. I remember really struggling to learn English. I thought the word tomorrow meant a toy. I thought there's a white kid who would play with Pokemon cards or some sort of cards. And I had those cards. I don't know how I think I stole them from the class, and I would just give it to him. I heard the word tomorrow when people were playing, so I thought it was called tomorrow. So I would be like, 1 tomorrow, 2 tomorrow, 3 tomorrow, and this kid was confused. But I was a Robin Hood. We can do an episode of how much I've stolen as a child. I did all my crimes until the age of 9, and then I quit. As soon as I got the frontal lobe fully developed, I was out of there. Okay, so third grade, half of a year in England, and different education, learning English and stuff, a little bit of math, whatever. And my mom said, my English was terrible, like with the math classes and all the stuff. She goes, I would look at your tests, and everything would be 100. She said I was doing well, at least at that point. Fourth grade in Yemen, the way you would go to the way you would get to the second level of a class from first, second, third, you have to complete it, and there's a certificate that you get. And for you to complete it, there's a midterm and there's a finals, and you have to do well on those. Those are the biggest metrics. And my family at this point have lost the apartment that I grew up in. They sold it. This is when my aunt had her thing, and my grandmother died while we were in Ethiopia. Sorry, while we are in London, my mom's mom dies. We come back, my home that I grew up in is sold, gone, very heartbreaking. And my aunt is flee to Ethiopia, and they've lost my certificates. So my other aunt's husband, Muhammad, said, okay, I know the principal at this place called Yarmouk. It's a public school that's like walking distance, but a little far. And we can get him in fourth grade. So he makes a call, puts me in fourth grade in a public school. This school was so bad. Mind you, my last schooling was in London, and I'm going there as a third grader. I'm going to swimming on Wednesday. It's great conditions, lovely place. We're supervised. A public school in Yemen is rough, bro. We're talking, you walk in the room and it looks like a jail cell, and there's not enough seats for everybody. It's so underfunded. So kids would fight over who can sit on the ground by the window. And then on top of that, the teachers, my God, these guys were demons. Because I remember I walked in and I just saw how rough the kids were. These are like public school kids in the poorer area of our neighborhood, another neighborhood, Sawan. And these kids were rough, man. And I remember when the teacher walked in and it was a female teacher, I was like, finally, some tenderness. And this lady walked in and she was like, who was yelling? She's like, who yelled? And I was like, nobody was yelling, no one, whatever. And then she told us all to like put our hands up like this with our palm down. And she took a meter stick, and with the edge of the meter stick, one by one, she would fucking just hit us as hard as she could. And I was like, this is terrible. The teachers suck. They're angry. The kids are unsupervised and just chaotic. We get to lunchtime, and lunchtime they go spit war. And I was like, spit war, what? And everybody starts spitting on each other. That's a game they played to pass the time. And I'm like, brother, I just came back from London. This is rough. I was like, this is not proper at all. If I could do a British accent right now, it would be kill. It would kill. It would be funny. Hello, I've not wanted. Okay, I'm not. I'm sorry. I am so sorry that I put you through that. Anyways, so after spit war, I was like, I don't think I can go to school in these conditions. The reason I tell you this story is then I started skipping school. I maybe went back one more time, and I swear to you, I skipped school for half a year. And that also could be its own episode. We'll circle back to me skipping school. And then midterms, because of the midterms, and that's my mom was like, I'm excited to see your midterms. I freaked out. I ran away from home for 3 days. We'll get to this. This is going to be a different episode. So didn't really have fourth grade schooling. I go to Ethiopia, and this time on the plane, I remember I was a very empathetic kid too. I remember thinking to myself on the plane, I said, my aunt is going through a lot. Life has been rough with her. I'm not gonna. I made a pact with myself. I'm not gonna be a bad kid. I'm not gonna steal. I'm not gonna fight. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna be a good student. I'm gonna get all A's. I'm gonna be a very easy child to my aunt. I made that pact. I remember making that pact as a 9-year-old on the plane ride to Ethiopia. We get to Ethiopia. They take me to Yemen Community School. And day one, my aunt is with me, and they I don't have my certificate. You know what I mean? I've lost the one from second grade, didn't complete third grade, and fourth grade I didn't complete. So this guy, who was a teacher, said, got to know us, got to know that I will eventually go to America, and he was, the other lady who was a teacher was there, and she was super impressed by the fact that I'll be in America. We'll come back to that later. But I can show one thing that's really annoying is my mom told me I'm going to be only in Ethiopia for like a year, but it ended up being 4 or 5 years. And that teacher every year, she'd be like, you're still not in America, I see. And she was like, you can tell like she was jealous and resentment. There's jealousy and resentment from the fact that I could escape and she couldn't, and the fact that I didn't, like she found joy in that, which is fucked up. Anyway, so this teacher goes, let's do a test and then we'll determine his class. And here's what I think was happening. That teacher, later on, I found out that he was a big corrupt teacher who was very into taking bribes. So like if you have a final, you're unsure, you bribe this guy, he taught a class, and he'll just give you an A or whatever. So I think what he was doing, he was buying some time so for my aunt to put some money or like, hook him up in a way or another. And he would have gave me a high school diploma that day if she paid him money. But she didn't catch his drift. So he goes, why don't you just write your name in Arabic? I write my name in Arabic. He takes one look and he goes, second grade. I was like, what kind of test is this, bro? And this is how much I internalized it. I was like, is my writing that bad? Is my writing so bad that this guy couldn't fathom that I spelled everything right, that I would be beyond second grade? So I go to Ethiopia and I start at second grade again, 2 years behind. This is probably why I held on to that genius identity, or like the thing that guy told me, is because like you feel real dumb when you're as tall as I was too. I got tall so fast. I had a little mustache by fourth grade, and nobody believed that I was of age of the. And I've lost how old I am, and a family friend was like, "I think your mom lied about your age so she can look younger," or some bullshit like that. He was wrong, but I was convinced I was 18 when I was 13, so I felt so embarrassed because at that school they would line us up in the morning, kind of like soldiers, and we will be outside and everybody's lined up by their class, and then we will do the anthems and announcements. And I felt so embarrassed being in my class. I would just go and stand with the eighth graders because I was like, oh, this is more my age. Anywho, that's a long answer to when I did try to like get into a life of being an academic and stuff like that. I've missed so much schooling. I was at fourth grade in Ethiopia, and then I stopped going to school because I was rebelling. I was like, get me out of here. You told me I'm going to be here for a year. It's like 4 years now. Get me the fuck out of here. So I stopped going to school. So I stopped going to school, and I came to the States. They put me in ninth grade based on my age. Had to like learn English, reading, writing. I was there for the last 2 weeks of eighth grade. But the main thing is because I stopped school at fourth grade and didn't go to school for a year and a half, I came to the States without ever being in fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, really. And in a new system, new school, new language, with being a year and a half off from any schooling. So my schooling, what's the word I'm looking for? The foundation is quite shaky, you know. And I remember the last 2 weeks of school here. This is how bad my English was. I was in math class, and the only empowering feeling I had is when I went and I grabbed the calculator. They had a bunch of calculators, and I was like, "This is the only time I can blend in and look like I know what's going on." Is just like every kid before the class starts, everybody grabs a calculator. You go grab a calculator. That made me feel good. And one day, teacher was giving an intense speech, and I didn't know what he was saying. I just knew that nobody was grabbing a calculator. And after he finished his speech, I just knew that's enough of a cue. I was like, I'm just going to let him finish his speech, and then I'll go grab the calculator. He finishes, I go grab the calculator. Everybody is in shambles. Everybody's laughing their ass off. And I thought they were laughing at me. So I said, "What funny?" And then I didn't even know why. And then my translator, there's a kid that was in the same class from Iraq who spoke Arabic and English, and they let him translate for me that 2 weeks. He was like, "Oh yeah, he just did a big speech on how he hates that people grab the calculators before the class and then like wastes time and all this stuff. And you just did what he told us not to do. And that's why I laughed." So that's how bad my English was. In the summer, I worked at a gas station in North Minneapolis, I believe, in the hood. And I got to learn how to speak a lot better. So between the summer and the new year as a ninth grader, I was able to at least speak English and understand a decent amount of it. And the only problem I had was at this point is like writing, reading, science, a lot of like the scientific words. You don't learn that at the gas station in North Minneapolis. So, but it was getting better. I was learning. Anyways, all in all to say, by the time I get to the new high school in Osseo, and high school starts there, 8th, 10th grade, I took the standard test and I did so poorly in the writing and the reading part. Did okay in the math, did really bad in reading and writing, that they had to call my family, my stepdad and mom, and tell them that I would not graduate on time based on these results. I did so bad. But calling back to the first grade teacher who called your boy a genius, that meant so much. Even though schooling wasn't like even naturally easy for me because I have ADHD and I can only pay attention to things that I'm interested in, I just didn't set limitations for myself because this guy said I was brilliant. So I knew just a matter of work. I believed in myself. I believed that I can learn and grasp anything. So I said, you know what? This was at the end of 10th grade. I was like, I'm going to prove you all wrong. Summer, I took classes for reading and writing. And come back 11th grade, I tested above average for both reading and writing, above average for even Americans. And then by 12th grade, I was doing college. I was doing PSEO, so I was able to go to a college because I was top 10% of the school. If you're top 10% of the school, you can go to any college. So, and in the meantime, I was out of ESL classes by end of 10th grade. I started taking AP physics and all this stuff, but I was really interested in being like a scientist, specifically a theoretical physicist. I just held on to like Einstein's quote about imagination because I was like, I know that I have good schooling. I know my math isn't that great and it's not up to par with all these greats, but I know my imagination was really solid. And he has a quote that says, imagination is more important than knowledge. Because the way I took that as at that age was I thought like imagination is almost like you tapping into you're taking the pre-existing knowledge, and imagination allows you to like leap into another portal and you can open more doorways for knowledge. Your imagination can like spark a new idea that expands our consciousness, etc. And I was like, I might not have the schoolings, but I believe I have the imagination. Anyways, so at one point I was like, I'm not nowhere near where these guys were at that age. You know what I mean? Like math wise, theorems, all the types. I just had to let go of that. And I held on to that so tight. And the part of it was like also support. Like when high school was over, I was, 4.0 students throughout the whole thing, except for the first year where English was bad. And I could have gone to any college, but my family never been to college in the US. So they didn't know the path. I didn't know where dorms, where do I live? I didn't know what financial aid was. I didn't know what all these things. I just like couldn't, I ended up just going to a community college because that's what I did when I was doing the PSUO program in high school. And that crushed me. I went in there and I was like, just, it wasn't as competitive or like, what I mean? It was just like, felt like a lot of people settled to be there. I didn't need to settle. I could have gone into a bigger place. I just didn't have support. And the years of North Hennepin, that crushed that dream. I think if I went to a college, maybe I would have continued something. And even in the years of that, I befriended a lot of Arab kids, or a lot of them were immigrants. And it's just so important to surround yourself with people who have self-belief. Because I had self-belief and I was like, I'm not scared to take any class. These guys were so scared of taking geography classes. They're like, oh, so hard. Because they didn't have that belief. And you spend enough time with this type of group, you start embodying their insecurities and you start taking in what they believe. So I was like, somehow just being in that circuit so long and that crew so long, I started thinking, I guess... can I even do intermediate algebra? You know what I mean? So like North Hennepin, all the dreams of being a scholar went away. And it could have been different. Interesting thing in high school, we took a personality test. I would love to find that test again. It was just like a long questionnaires, and then at the end of it, it was just supposed to help you just having a personality. It's personality, and then they can gauge what what job you can do in the future. And I remember doing all the answers, hoping for like scientists, physicists, all that stuff. And it just kept saying director, producer, actor is all Hollywood shit. And I remember being so upset. So I'm in North Hennepin and I'm not feeling it. I don't even think I can be an engineer at this point, and I don't have the resources, don't have the money. Just my soul is being crushed. I'm dying, and I'm going through a breakup at this point too, and that's like really, bugging me. And and that breakup, I think I started isolating again, and I do well in isolation. Anytime I try to be part of a group, I never fit in fully. I've always been a disruptor. People either are drawn into me or have a strong reaction against me. No one is like, very rarely are people are neutral with me. So in any group settings, there are maybe two people that like love me and two people who can't stand me. And I just don't feel good in groups. I don't feel good in cliques. I never felt like I could belong, and I always have issues with whatever. I have issues with pattern and people who just are stuck in cycles. I can stay within a cycle more. I'm a disruptor to myself as well. I just gotta disrupt patterns, and that's where I think some of the resentment comes. If I'm in a space or meet people who are stuck in a cycle that gives them false comfort, and I disrupt that pattern, they resent me and push me because they want to hold on to that comfort. Anyways, so community college, I'm in there for a long time. I go through phases. I was like, maybe it's not too late to be an inventor. I used to admire Da Vinci a lot. I thought he was the model guy. He was my favorite guy because, again, the root of what I have is a good imagination, and he embodied how, getting back to not liking patterns and being stuck in a thingy. He was ideal because it's that ADHD mentality too. Like he was a painter, he invented shit, he did so many things, and I wanted to be like him. So I had a notebook, and the notebook would have inventions, and honestly, some of the ideas were not bad. I just didn't know how to bring them back to life. But I'll tell you. Like for example, everybody uses the tile or the air tags. In community college, I came up with that for a class, and my idea was going to be this. My idea had a GPS tracker on that you can put on a key or a remote, because we would lose our remote a lot, and then there would be a magnetic source or a magnetic a base that you can put on a fridge, and when you lose your thing, you go press the button. It will ring. It will ring the key or the remote or whatever. That was the idea that I had. So I had things like that. I would have ideas like this, like, so I had a notebook that I would jog these ideas. And then I was interested in poetry. I would write poetry. I was a notebook for poetry. And then I was interested in what else? Inventions, and then any like theoretical ideas I had also I'll write on a different base. So I had 3 notebooks, and then those notebooks is what I would jog in these things. And throughout high school, when I would do essays and stuff like that, even with my terrible grammar, by the way, I have the worst grammar, I would get high compliments from teachers. I had compliments from like family, friends somehow will see my writings and be like, this is incredible. Or college professors and school and stuff like that. I've always gotten high compliments on my writing. And funny enough, because of my ADHD, I would always write those things the day of, like the morning of. And I would get A's all the time. So I kept getting compliments that I was a good writer. So I knew the base of the thing that I'm going for. I'm understanding now. It's not basketball. It's not necessarily physics. I think that ship is sailing. But I think it's in writing. So I started exploring poetry. And I started writing a book at one point around that age too. I wrote a nonfiction based on an ethic class I took. And the ethic class was pondering the question, is life worth living? And I used that theme and question, and I wrote a thing around it, a story around it. And, finished it, and it felt good to write. But then I was like, this feels incomplete. This is not what I don't think I could be a writer forever. Started doing the poetry because I can post it online. And then the poetry became rap at one point. I was like, poetry, I don't know. I like rap. I love rap music. Because rappers have the story of overcoming. You know what I mean? They just have always had these overcoming stories, and I related to that. I came from nothing. I had hardship. Me and rappers have a lot of like common stuff, minus maybe a lot of the gun things, and the drugs. But I felt like rap was the poetry of the streets, and I felt a little bit too. I wasn't a white guy pontificating through poetry. I was a kid who've seen a lot, and so I would write dumb rhymes and post it on Facebook, and that felt good. I was like, I think I like writing, but I like sharing my writing, so that felt good. So I was like getting close. And then one day, someone saw a poem I wrote, and they asked me to come and perform it at the U of M. And it was in front of it was a Muslim event, so it was all like Arabs and Muslims, which is a nightmare for me because I've always felt like I've never belonged in that group. I've always felt the most sensitive around these folks because they probably face most of my rejections from these groups. And I went up and I was so nervous. And then I would do the poem and I couldn't do it. I was so nervous. So what I would do is I would just crack jokes in between. So I finish thinking I did the worst job possible. I'm getting high fives. Bro, that was so funny. Bro, you killed it. Bro, that was fun. I was doing a set instead of poetry. So that's my first time, like, as an adult, getting a sense of funny enough, I used my defense mechanism, which is funniness, to deal with the awkwardness and discomfort of forgetting the poem and not being able to be serious. I had a hard time being serious. That's the other thing. Anytime I try to be serious, I've always resorted to jokes. I hated presentations in school. Hated them. Anytime I go up and I did a presentation, I would crack jokes to move the presentation. I've always used humor. So that was interesting. So I was like, okay, maybe not poetry. I'm getting so close. You see what I'm saying? Rap, poetry, but it's comedy. And I am a huge stand-up fan at this point. I am taking in so much Carlin. I watched all 10 of his specials. I'm watching Bill Hicks. I'm watching Dave Chappelle was my favorite at the time. And it felt so cool watching stand-up. It felt so good. I felt the least amount of loneliness when I would watch stand-up. Because these guys think and they see through the bullshit and they share it and they ponder on these things, and usually they're disruptors, That's what a comic is. It's a disruptor. You see through the bullshit and you shake us up a little bit. And that's who I am. That's my core identity and my essence. And I love stand-ups. Didn't think about doing stand-up. I did think about it the first time I saw it. Funny enough, this is the thing. I feel like if you want to know what you were meant to do, the signs were there. You just kind of have to pay attention. So the first time I saw stand-up comedy was when I was 15, maybe. I just moved to the States. I would watch Conan at night to learn English, and because I loved him. He was so funny in a way that transcended language. He was so silly with his body and the string dance he would do, and his spirit was so silly and fun, and he was like smart. And I loved Conan. I would watch him every night, and my older sister, would come down the basement and come to my room and watch him together as well. And one day he had Jim Gaffigan on. I think this was like 2005 or something. And I saw his stand-up for the first time, but I also saw the monologue portion, felt like stand-up as well. And I love that. And I would imagine myself doing the monologue. And I remember trying to figure out what their email is and see if I can get on their show and do the monologue. I've had these urges and fantasies. So the urge was there from the very beginning of watching stand-up, because stand-up didn't exist in the Middle East and Yemen. So I'm learning about it in the States. And I remember even writing a joke. The first premise I've ever written was when I was 15, and I wrote that the observation was Americans are a little dumb, that they don't vote based on issues and qualification. They vote based on entertainment. That's why Arnold was a governor. That's why Bush beat Kerry, because Bush was more entertaining and funny. So that was the first premise I've ever written. That's the first idea. I was 15 and I wrote it down. And then, through high school, and then I get into the other, dreams and aspirations of being a scientist and stuff like that. And that's such a serious world. You suppress the silliness of being a comic and stuff like that. So that killed or suppressed that persona. And then I remember when I took that summer class first year, I was the first time I was comfortable in the classroom. Like in class, people, a lot of people think you're the class clown when you're a comic, but not necessarily. I was a class clown if I was comfortable in the class or amongst friends that I'm comfortable with. Actually, I prefer being quiet and unseen. This class was comfortable. It was a bunch of ESL folk and immigrants, so I just cracked jokes. I was obnoxious, so I just roasting, I loved attention when I wanted it. And I remember this Mexican kid was like, "Bro, you should be a stand-up." And at the same time, here's another sign. Another American white kid would come to me every morning, and he would be listening to stand-up comics on his Walkman, and he'd just give me one of his earpiece, and I would listen with him, and I had no idea what they were saying. My English wasn't great yet, but all the time when he laughs, I would laugh, and I'd be like, so funny, so funny. I would love to know who he was making me listen to, and I also wonder if that kid became a comic. If you're out there and you went to Fridley High School around 2003, 4, and you took a summer class and you're a white kid who loved stand-up, hit me up. You were awesome. So, signs were there. The urge was there. 21, struggling. Like, what am I supposed to do? I'm dying out here, dude. I know I'm not meant to do the traditional path. Come on, I'm dying out here. I need to figure out my path. I'm searching. I'm isolating myself from the group that I told you about, the college guys. And the more I am in isolation, the more creative I become, the more I can hear my intuition. There's a beauty to isolation if you accept it. And I would go to the one person I would hang out with is my best friend, Andrew. Andrew and I, on the weekends, will link up at night, and we'd go to college parties, frat parties, and I hated those. I've always hated crowds, ironically, especially in like those intimate, smaller settings. And the way I'd feel comfortable or make myself comfortable is I would take on a character. Sometimes I'd be a fake soccer star from the Middle East visiting, sometimes a prince, whatever, right? And I would embody the character and come in with a heavy accent. And it would be interesting because when I would go to these parties as myself, I am ignored completely. Nobody's talking to me. I'm shy. I'm hiding. When I go as a character, and the crowd would form around me. By the end of the night, it would be like everybody just around me and laughing. And then Andrew would be like, "Dude, that's so funny. You got to do stand up." So the reminder comes again. Now Andrew, my best friend, says, "I got to do stand up," and he says it more than once. I do the poetry thing. I get laughs. I start thinking about it. I go, yeah, I don't have a hard time being serious. I don't think I'm a serious guy. I'm consuming a lot of stand-up. I'm like, I think I'm this guy. I think I'm a stand-up. I think that's what I should try. I think that's the next move. Right at 3 minutes, I look up comedy, and the reason it's hard, this is again back to resources and representation and why those things matter. You Jewish kid who happens to be funny, there's so many Jewish comics out there that you go, that's an avenue. I can be like Seinfeld. I can be like this guy. I can be like that guy. You a Yemeni kid and you have urges to do stand-up comedy, ain't nobody out there, bro. I was literally the first person from Yemen to do stand-up comedy. The path wasn't clear. The path wasn't part of our culture. The path wasn't part of, and it's an odd path to take. And a lot of times, and the reason I got to be a stand-up is because I've always went against what I was supposed to do. in the community that was like the Yemeni, whatever community, I was always seen as an outsider. I was the odd kid. This guy's weird. They've said so many shit about me. Oh, this kid is crazy. This kid is weird. That things would get back to me and be like, I remember living with this guy at one point who was Yemeni, and he's like, yeah, man, they said you're crazy and all this time. You're really pretty chill. They also say you smoke a lot of weed. I was like, I don't even smoke weed. So I was seen as a cuckoo guy, and I was fine with that. Because I knew from a young age that originality is very important. Imagination and originality are the two things I've held on to, and because I've always been on the outside looking in, and because I've never wanted to belong to a group, I saw the flip side to be that I am maintaining my originality, my original way of seeing the world, and my original identity that doesn't require me to sell out any part of who I am to belong into a group. I saw that value from a young age. So being in Ethiopia, I've held on to that. I've preserved myself, and I don't know if it's intentional. And again, back to the spirituality shit, I don't know if something that I was just hearing intuitively from a different place. But because of that, these conditions allowed me to be the first guy from Yemen to ever attempt stand-up comedy. So on a Monday night, and it was easy to remember because it was Dr. King's Day, MLK Day 2011, I find an open mic called Acme Comedy Company. They have an open mic called Caught in the Act. And I Googled comedy clubs, and that was the only thing that's the only thing that came out. That in the House of Comedy at the mall. I called Andrew and said, hey, I'm ready to try stand up. Can I practice with you? We practiced the 3 minutes in my garage. And he's such a good friend. He'll tell me what's not funny. He's told me what's funny, and da-da-da. Practice well. Got 3 minutes down. Practice. Monday night comes along. Andrew drives me to Acme. Sign up. You sign up between 6 and 7 p.m. You wait till 8 p.m. for the show. And I believe around 7:30 is when the open mic list comes out. And you know if you made it or not. If you're first time, you're guaranteed 3 minutes. You got to put a star on your name. So put Ali Sultan, star. The list comes up. I am on 7th. And some of the people I remember from that list that I'm friends with till this day is Nate Abishire was on that list. He was 3rd. I remember Trevor Anderson, a buddy of mine. Cy Amison was on that list as well. Those are the people I remember from that night. And another guy who stopped doing comedy. I get so nervous, man. I didn't know this place is going to be full to the brim. This place is an anomaly in open mics. So you go to any open mic in any other city, it's usually mostly comedians at a shitty bar waiting to get on, and nobody's listening. This open mic is a special mic. The only other mic that I can compare it to is Comedy on State in Madison. It's a full room. We're talking about near 300 people in this mini room in the basement that's almost like a mini theater. And I'm like, yo, this is insane. This is a lot of people for my first time. And these guys are funny. These guys go up and they're crushing. And I look at Andrew and I go, I don't think I want to do this, man. I'm discouraged. He goes, dude, if you don't do this, I'm going to let you walk home. Go up on stage. I say 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds worth of stuff. I get absolute silence. I get so nervous. And my defense mechanism kicks in, which is to be funny. And the way I was funny is I broke from the written thing, and I looked at a guy wearing something, whatever, and I addressed somebody in the crowd. I did the look crowd work, and this is back when crowd work was cool. And it gets a laugh, a big laugh, and that big laugh was enough encouragement for me to believe in the jokes, and then I started crushing, bro, with jokes I'll never tell anybody. These jokes are going to die with me. I remember my full set. I can tell you each joke. You know what? I'll be brave. I'll tell you some of the jokes, some of the ideas I had. This is the shit that I was working with. I think one of the jokes was as an impression of Michael Jackson, and he's struggling to pee. You know, how did it go? I forgot how it goes. It was a pun based on something, one of his songs. And one of it was an invention I made, which was solar powered vibrators. And the joke was like, you know, it's I came up with this idea that's environmental and da da da. And then the punchline was like, it's solar vibrators. And then I was like, ladies, you can just be standing by the window, charge it up, and then go to town. And I get off the stage, and one of the audience members stands up. A man stands up, a guy who was like maybe 40, and he gives me a high five out of excitement. And here's the interesting thing about comedy, and the reason I felt the urge to tell you the shitty jokes. Comedy is not always about jokes. That's the weirdest thing about comedy. There's another thing there because you can write the tightest, best 5-minute jokes, and you take that 5 minutes and you perform it perform it in the same room, in the same comedy club 10 different times and get 10 different results. And part of it is what the audience is bringing into the show and their stuff. But the bigger part of it is you. Beyond the jokes are the vehicle to the soul. There is a vibration that happens. There is excitement. There's another thing when you get to a certain space, anything will be funny. Because of that little crowd work moment that I had, I got in a vibration with the audience. We got into like a momentum, and then it almost didn't matter what I've said as long as it's remotely funny. Because without that momentum, without the freedom of expression, without the excitement and the energy that you put in, you just go up just jokes by jokes on their own. It's not gonna work. That's why sometimes you do your killer joke and you're like, why did it not work? Because maybe you're not into it anymore. You're bored of the joke. Maybe you had sometimes a tag would work. Sometimes, I do a joke and then a tag wouldn't work, and it wouldn't work because a tag is a punchline, because I thought it might not work. If I have a little bit of a disbelief when I say it, it doesn't work. It's so weird. But if I am certain that it would work, it works. I had like opening jokes that I would like. When I thought they were funny, they would work. And sometimes when I think that, hey, I don't think this joke works in a minute, and that doesn't work. Granted, that's the whole thing, but jokes do, there's levels to jokes and writing. Some jokes are better than others, etc. But I'm saying sometimes there's another element that actually overshadows the writing, which is energy. And some people can learn to kind of almost fabricate energy and rhythm, etc. Anyways, do stand up first time. Get up. It felt so good, guys. It felt so good. And I slept terrible. I slept so bad. I slept so bad, but I slept good at the same time. I was so excited I couldn't fall asleep. I could not fall asleep because this calling that I had, this pull, trying to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to do on this fucking planet. Trying to figure out my purpose. It was the first time when it was quiet and I was like, this is it, man. This is what I was looking for. And, and that was 14 years ago? 14 years ago. And you have your ups and downs and doubts and struggles, but this was it, man. That was the base, and it's not the only thing I'm meant to do, but it was the bigger. It embodied everything. The writing, the writing is a big part of stand-up. Writing is the base. Self-expression is important to me, but the other element was it's a people's business. That's why being an author behind in front of a computer wasn't satisfying enough. I like the science of people. My whole life was around understanding people, trying to figure out intent, vibing, rebelling against, disrupting, encouraging, all of those things. Stand-up embodied so many of my identities in one thing. So when people go, why stand-up? Is because it speaks to all of me. And, and I get to, in a way, relive the childhood that was robbed from me. With stand-up is this. It feels very much that way. It felt like you going on a school trip every time you go on the road. Oh yeah, and I get to choose which of my friends get to come with me. And we're on the road. We're exploring a new town, performing for people. my God, what a blessing stand-up is. I'm so thankful to have found stand-up, and I'm so thankful that I stuck through and found the calling. I'm so grateful that I was patient and that I went with the up and down, and I just wasn't satisfied. How many of you are out there? How many of you are out there who feel the same pull? Who feel like there's something, something I always keep saying to myself, this has to mean more. This life has to mean more than patterns, than routines, than the traditional societal paths. It's got to mean more. The art of existence. Just us being here. If you think about what it took and what it's meant for us to be here and all that this is, I can't just dismiss all of this as a coincidence. It has to be more. It has to mean more, and it means more when you find your calling. And your calling could be different. It doesn't have to be stand-up. It doesn't have to be writing. It's whatever fulfills that call and void, whatever makes you feel good, whatever feels meant to be. When you find your calling, there's, ups and downs and there's tests, but it feels easy. It feels so easy to be in a stand-up, and stand-up is hard. You understand how fucking hard stand-up is? It's so hard. That's why not all of you can do it. And that's why a lot of people quit. So many people start and quit stand-up immediately because it's so hard. But when you find your calling, when you find that thing that's your shit, no matter how hard it is, you see it through. You stay in there as long as you continue to listen to yourself. I think I've seen people like stay in the game and then they quit because they got distracted by something else and disconnected from that initial thing. It's like, why were you in this for? For me, like the essence of I love stand-up so much. I love it itself. I love what it's given me. I love, as a fan, as a comic, I love how much it opened up the world to me. I love being able to express myself, to be creative, and all the other little avenues that you can, podcast. And this is through stand-up. I wouldn't be doing this without stand-up. Writing a script, doing all this stuff. It's all, and it's all fun. But sometimes we, as stand-ups, we get caught up on the results. We get caught up on the outcome and comparing ourselves to other comics and thinking, oh, I'm not doing well because this guy's catapulting to blah blah blah. But that's what gets you out of loving this. That's how you fall out of love from stand-up. But you stick to that fucking first year, man. You know everything you needed to know. You know that this is hard. You know that it's a journey of self-improvement and growth, not only just as a comic but as a person. Because the more I grow, the more I have to talk about. The more I experiences, the more I can say and share. And God bless stand-up, bro. I'm so happy to have found it. So yeah, this is gonna be maybe a few episodes just to talk about the journey as a stand-up, because I just had to tell you the base and then tell you how I got to this point. But there's more to say, but I think that's enough for one episode. Thank you so much for listening. This is The Road with Ali Sultan. Tune in and support however you want to support. Anyways, love you guys. Be well. I want to end with gratitude. I am grateful, very grateful to have found stand-up and to keep falling in love with stand-up. I am grateful for being able to speak, to have a voice, both literally and metaphorically. I'm grateful to be able to be open up and share more of myself and story. I'm grateful for you guys to listen. I am grateful for my friends and peers and bookers and every single person who've helped me through this journey. Every person that taught me to listen or gave me a hand. You don't make it on your own. People pull you slowly, and you stand on the shoulders of others. I'm grateful for every person I met, every lesson I've learned, whether good or bad. I'm grateful to be alive and well. Health is everything. Every night, I think I like to do before I go to bed, and maybe something you can try. to help you with gratitude. And I feel like it's a good way to go to sleep, and then you wake up with a sense of gratitude. I think to myself 5 things I'm grateful for, and it doesn't have to be 5, but it could be a daily thing. It could be like something that's like, you know what, the DMV trip was smooth as hell. That wasn't too bad. I'm grateful for that. And it could be something as big as, one thing that I say every night is grateful for health, both mental and physical. I've dealt with anxiety. I've dealt with depression. I've dealt with like the mind turning on you is some of the bleakest shit. I'm grateful that I have my good mental health and physical health. I'm grateful that I could walk, exercise, feel good on my body. One of my favorite quotes is that health is a crown only the sick can see. Health, and maybe I'm butchering the quote, but that's the meaning of it. It's a crown that only the sick can see. So gratitude to health, gratitude to love. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.